Welcome to the Visionary Soul podcast, where we dive deep into spirituality, metaphysics, expanding consciousness, and new paradigm leadership. This is a space for visionary leaders like you to unlock your highest potential, expand your impact, and co-create with the divine. Get ready for transmissions, insights, and activations that will elevate your journey and ignite your soul's mission. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Visionary Soul podcast. I am so excited. Today I have Laurie Wheeler, and she is a transformational holistic practitioner and a catalyst for self-mastery for over 30 years. My goodness, it is such an honor to have you, Laurie. And just to kind of encompass a little bit about you and your work, can you tell us some of your history and what do you do?
Okay, sure. Thank you so much, Nikki, for having me on today. It's just a real pleasure to always work and host with you. I love it. Thank you. Yeah, so I have been in my work for over 30 years. I've stopped counting now. And I kind of got brought into it in what I call a rude awakening. I had no idea that this is what I was in for. And I can just give a little bit of background on that going forward. So I've always kind of been connected to my intuition, even though I didn't really know that's what it was. And I've channeled since I was 5 years old, but I didn't know that's what it was either. I just was having conversations with these beings that would talk to me. And I think it's because I was really alone. I didn't have any brothers or sisters till I was 5. And so I really spent a lot of time in my imagination, what I called it as an imagination anyway. I had a lot of friends, imaginary friends, and they were everywhere with me, everywhere. So, I could see and I could hear, and then, I went through normal age things, and I was married young, and I had 4 children, and I had vision about I was going to have 4 children, and what that was going to look like, and oh my goodness, all kinds of information would come to me giving me a heads up on what was coming. And I still get that quite often. And I'm very grateful for it, because sometimes, it gives you a laid out plan of what can occur. It doesn't mean you have to follow it, but it's there for you. Although most of the time it really happens anyway, whether you kind of like it or not, it's going to happen, because there are some things that you're really destined for. So like people in your path that come along and such, and like me having 4 children, that was inevitable. I was going to have 4 kids, and what they were and such. So and then somewhere in my early 30s, we built a house on native burial ground. Didn't know it at the time, and I had what I call a rude awakening. We became sick from toxic water on the land. Also, I actually was called back to this particular tree that was on my land. We had 13 acres, and when I leaned up against the tree, I bilocated to another timeline. And it was about an attack on a small tribe, and many people were killed, and there were many spirits that were left kind of in limbo, so to speak. And one of them happened to be in the house that we built, or we built on their space, right? Whichever way you look at it. And so this particular spirit, she really kind of clung and attached to my family. When you're in that middle space, I'll call it, you really oftentimes don't really realize that you're there. You still might feel like you're alive, but not quite, and you don't really understand it. And she was a young soul. Anyway, she really clung to my family. And I mean, there's a whole lot about the story. I write about it in my book, Oh No, Not Another Learning Experience. And it's a really fascinating story because it's very unusual. I have never heard anybody's story like it, but it was my story. And so after that, what happened was I started to go through different medical process, regular medicine, chiropractic, and couldn't find an answer. And then I finally found a homeopath, and the homeopath helped me a lot, helped my family a lot. And simultaneous to all of this, I was pretty sick from the toxic water. I lost a lot of my memory. And so it's very hard to function without a lot of memory, right? And so what happened was I really had no choice but to then trust my intuition or to learn how to grow my intuition, because I always had it, but it really needed a lot of tweaking, let's put it that way. So what was really great, even though it was very difficult, I had to rely on it. And that was so challenging because I had nothing else I could fall back on. And it was all the design, right? Looking back, it was really a design, because even I took a couple classes in kinesiology, and I know kinesiology. What my guidance told me was, you can't even use kinesiology. You can't use anything physical. You're going to have to learn everything through the energy field. And I thought, I don't even know how to do this. Like I was in a quandary of, I don't know, but okay, I trust you, as silly as that sounds in a sort of way, right? You hand it over, you surrender. And the more I surrender, and still even to this day, and I find with clients as well and people I speak to, the better off we are, because we give it over. You reach a point and you say, okay, I give up. I'm going to give it to you. You're going to show me. And that's really good, because that kind of like you reach a point in your ego where it's okay. You're willing to accept influence from the higher sources. So that's kind of the skinny of it. But in the interim, I was in real estate. And as this was all going on, I had a very good position in real estate. I worked for a company, and I was the manager of quite a very large office. So I ran an office of a lot of realtors. And I was like one day thinking, you know what? I'm going to teach them how to use their intuition so that they can go out and get sales in that, And I thought it would just be fun to bring this side into this side, right? And merge it together. Well, they really got on board with it, some of them, and they were really liking it. And so then they'd come and ask me questions. Well, what do you get about this and feel about this? And so when I had practiced that enough, I guess, and I reached a certain level, that job was finished. And so that's kind of the way it goes in life. You're given, I call them densities, the way you see your realities, right? And you move through different densities of how you see things, or plateaus as well. Like you'll learn something, you'll practice it, you'll get really good. And then it's like moving on to the next class, the next rung up the ladder, so to speak, whatever you want to call it. And it does, it teaches you, and then you put it into practice, you get good at it. And then, you know what, just when you think you've got it, okay, get ready, because now the next lesson's coming, or the next thing for you to learn, and that's life. So it's been good, the learning, and it's challenging too, though.
It's really interesting. You mentioned a lot of things that I kind of want to tap on. Like first and foremost, the premonitions. And it's so interesting you said like you got your premonitions, because I got premonitions back in like 2019 or somewhere close to there, that was showing me visions. And it was just like visions of where my consciousness was at the time, was like big businesses and very powerful and influential people. And I definitely thought like maybe it was in real estate because I saw buildings and stuff. And I just followed that. And I was like, where is this guiding me? And I just connected with the energy. And I left my corporate job to try to manifest this, right? I left it and I started entrepreneurship, and I was like, okay, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I will try something. And like you said, it was a following of that intuition. And now, it's been 5 years since then. 5 years later, I kind of understand the energies a little bit more. I am in that space where I am with very influential people, but the power I thought back then was different. It was about helping humanity and having that kind of power versus the more like egotistical, like what we have now, capitalist power, right? And so it really has transformed. You also mentioned you lean on a tree and you went back to a past life. Like, what was all of that about, and how did it serve you?
Yeah. Well, how did it serve me? That's a really good question. One, it opened me up to my capabilities. So sometimes when we have an experience, it also teaches you that you are able to. And so for me, it's always about learning about energy and the many facets. So, like today, I work with a quantum biologist in the research science and study of DNA and water and how electrical conductivity affects it. So that's a one section. All the different modalities I work in are different varying degrees of how energy affects us. It's just the multi levels, and still a baby, in learning this. Like I said before, just as you think you've learned and you're got it kind of under wraps, something new comes along and teaches you more because it's constantly expanding, right? So you're going to expand with it, and your light and your understanding of energy and light and what that is. And I think that's just what that happening did, is it showed me, all kinds of things within that spectrum. It also opened me to realize that, wow, I'm in touch with this, and that I have the ability to transverse through different multi-dimensions, even though I really didn't know what that was called at the time. Sometimes a thing happens, or you're given some piece of information, but you really don't even know what it is. That still happens to me today. Oh my gosh, all the time, right? And then I have to, what do I do with that now? And I've got to kind of research what that might be, or wait until I hear more about it. But it's given ahead of time, so that it's almost like a heads up of what's kind of coming, So that's good too. I think I'm natural to this as well. I was born a Leo in the astrological understanding, and so it's a leader naturally, But again, there's the shadow side to it as well. But it's the drive, So when you don't know about yourself, we're all different. It's our responsibility to know who we are, to find out who we are, to follow our path, because you make a contract, right? Everybody knows you make a contract before you come in, and nothing is done haphazardly. There's so much detail in a contract, right down to how many hairs on your head, freckles on your body, color of eyes, all this super, super important. And what is affecting that as well. So if you're in different timelines or other timelines, having some kind of information that's transmitting to you, the more you open up, the more you hear those transmissions in one part of yourself, probably DNA, and that's illuminating you too. And so, you've got all this energy going on. What do you do with all of it? How do you find yourself clear? I mean, me, I've got a million stickies all over myself, all over my desk, keeping me on task, right? With what's going on and what I got to think about and do and all that, But I think who you are is super important to what you're here for. And so I know I'm an interplanetary, I call them. There's 3 types. There's Earth-based, those that incarnate over and over again on the earth. Not to say that you haven't been other places, but primarily on earth. And then eventually you turn around and you're a teacher for those on earth, but primarily this is your reincarnation place. There are those that are what I call interplanetaries. They come from other places primarily. I've known this a long time. Those who say this just never feels like home to me. I feel out of sorts here. I feel out of sorts on my body. I mean, there's all kinds of verbiage we use that's depicting of that you're not really from here. And then you've got the angelic realm, and they're far and few between on this earth, very few, but all come from the angelic realm, and specifically here just for earth and to bring earth forward. So it's important to know who you are, why you're here, what your purpose is, what are the capabilities that you bring in. This is huge. People coming into this now, learning about what they're really capable of, and that will continue to change and grow, evolve. Yay, as we move forward, as we move through our densities, we come to learn, and people waking up all the time. I have clients that come to me, I'm just waking up. Wow. I know what that's like. I kind of remember that, and I know it daily because I wake up every day and I know what it feels like, So having compassion for that, and being a good leader for people like that, to help them come into who they are, so that they know themselves and they can follow their path, and become and encourage the best part of who they are, because that's my mission. I mean, I feel that. I have this super fabulous plaque, and it says, 100 years from now, it will not matter what my bank account was, what car I drove, or where I lived, but rather the difference I made in another's life. That hangs over my wall because it's very important to me, because that is the conviction of my heart. And you follow it, whether sometimes you like it or not. And that happens too, because spirit will ask you to do things, or nudge you to do things. And it's like, oh my gosh, are you really wanting me to do that? Do you know how hard that's going to be for me as a human being? I mean, it's not easy, right? So I have a last chapter in my book. It's not easy being green, because it's not easy being who you are when got these capabilities and you follow the energy, and the spirit. So yeah, I answered that question.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of things, but one thing that stood out is like what you said about following your, like knowing who you are, because that was one of the biggest things for me when I woke up. And even before then, in 2019, I don't think I was fully awake, but having that feeling that there was something more and going on like this journey of searching, like, what is this feeling and trying to manifest it into my reality. And as I was going, and of course, it starts off with seeking. I think all of us are seekers, right? We start off seeking, and then we come to a point where it's more about trusting and not pushing and trying to create, but integrating with source and being in alignment. From my understanding of a lot of things now, there's moments where those visions are so big that I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. So I might as well just surrender and see what comes next. Like you said, you get all these visions and you're like, what is this? What am I supposed to do with this? When you get those, do you just hold on to them? And I know you said you start researching some of them, but what about the ones that you actually don't know what to do with? Like there's no research out there. Perhaps for me, it was just like, oh, I gave you a number or I gave you a podcast and now go make it or something. And you
Here,
reach
now
out to
what do I
people
do?
that
Right.
way.
And this will happen throughout life once you awaken, right? Because that's really the kind of way I don't like to use the word test, but the kind of way it's really up to you what you're going to do with it. And one of the main things that continually rolls off my tongue that I hear from spirit all the time is, it's not about the happening. It's what you do with it that really matters. And it really does. You can fall down and not get up. You can get up right away. You can forge forward and not wait for spirit to guide you. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could potentially do, right? So I've got a little, I'm going to give a little example. Years ago, I could hear a language running through my head. It wasn't a language I knew of. I thought it was maybe Native American language because I didn't know what it was, right? Didn't sound like anything I was familiar with in any regular language, right? So I thought, I've got to know what this is because they're talking to me and I have no way of interpreting this really. So I thought maybe I could take a class. Well, I couldn't figure that out. Okay. So then I just sat with it, right? Then they came to me and they said, so the energy, when I say the energy, I got hits on it. I got downloads. I had vision or a sense somewhere within me. I would hear a voice or something speaking, and it would say to me, and the vision came very clear like this. I could see myself standing in front of a podium with lots of people out in the audience, right? And I'm standing there holding my hands up like this. And I'm like, and they're telling me it's going to transmit. And I'm like, what's going to transmit? How is it going to transmit? What is it? What do I tell people? Like, how do I get them to come in and, hey, I'm going to do a transmission, but I don't know what it is. I don't know anything about it. So it's like, what do you do with it when it comes to you, right? And I sat like that for a while. But for me, I get things in advance, just like you're talking about too. Something will come. What happens is you're not in your alpha at the time. You are in the energy field and accessing either the Akashics, the future, some realm where you're getting information ahead of time. It's kind of like what I like to think of a preparation, you know, it's telling you, it's leading you to what more is coming, right? And so that's okay. I mean, like when I had a vision that I was going to have 4 children, I obviously couldn't have all 4 at once. There's no way that I could determine what they were going to be, but this was the vision, right? So you kind of just sit with it, you know, like we just mentioned, but you know, it's kind of coming. And so now today, after I speak light language very fluently, but I also work with light. I transmit it. So I can stand in front of a group or a person. I can transmit light. I work in psychometry. So everything comes through my hands. It comes through my body, but it really comes through my hands very strongly. So when I touch something or I transmit or whatever, it's so much power that comes through my hands. I can feel it. And I just have to stand and just allow it to do its thing. It does its own. I'm just the conduit, right? Because I personally don't have all of that. It's coming from outside sources as well, the light, or wherever it's coming from, but the light. And so it just transmits. And so now I've learned what to do with it. But it took quite a while for me to really open up and understand. And I was excited, like, okay, I know there's going to be something. Give me a little more information. It sounds like what? Because it is exciting, because it's part of your gift, who you are, your capability. But what do you do with it? You know, how do you proceed forward in life with it? And yes, sometimes you really have to have patience to allow it to be. But when I could learn, it was a real learning process. Like I could hear it, and it first started sounding like this, you know, kind of weird sound, you know, and I thought, oh, I could never stand up in front of a group and do that, you know. You got to be kidding. You're going to ask me to do that, you know. But now it's very fluid, and now I translate the light language. I can translate other people's light language. It flows, you know, but it takes time for that energy. I think it takes time for it to come through your ego, your brain process. You've got filters. It's all of it. It's all of it, you know?
I
Yeah.
understand that too, because like it's funny, like light language came through a while back, and I was like thinking the same thing. I was like, you want me to say that in front of people? And like when I sat down to try it, like my throat felt stuck. I'm like, "Ugh, ugh." And I was just like, all right, give me a second. Like, let's do some work on myself. I was like, let's turn off some of these ego filters. And I just imagined myself turning off those filters just to help some of it come through, which is something else I wanted to ask is, you know, sometimes we go into healing spaces or we see things in the healing realm. Is that us using our imagination to heal ourselves?
Well, that's a really good question when we say, is that our imagination? Because everything is our conscious imagination in a sort of way. And I work in hypnosis, and that's what I also tell people it's conscious imagination. So, you know, when you're imagining, not everything you imagine is in the realm of what's going to actually happen. Because when you work in quantum is the realm of possibility and probability in a way. Okay. So you are accessing information, but does everything need to actually come to fruition? I don't believe it does. Although what you're accessing is some aspect in what I call your matrix of energy, wherever that may be stored, and you're accessing it. So you're moving interdimensionally, sort of, you know, multidimensionally, right? Whatever that is. And it would behoove you or anyone to ask what realm you're in, and what, ask questions. Ask a million questions, you know. I think that's how we learn, right? And everything comes through the high self. So everything is going to access through that. So it's like coming up and out and into the other energy levels, the other, you know, the aspect of your matrix, you know. And I think that's how we access it, you know. But when you get really fluent with it, you can just think it in a moment, and you're just there. It's just there automatically. You don't have to do a procedure or anything. It's just you're there because it's like riding a bike. When you get on a bike or you get in your car, you just know how to do it. So it comes in time the more you do it. Does that answer that sort of?
It does. What you mentioned about like the quantum realm, like we see aspects or like I guess when we enter the quantum, we access all of our timelines. Is that correct? Like we have possibility, we have infinite timelines.
I guess we're in the quantum. I've never asked where that actually exists in the quantum. Yeah. It's the realm of possible. And so I'm assuming that is quantum.
And our intention in general could release it. Like for example, like I think about what Bashar says sometimes. He just says, if it comes to awareness, it's really just a choice and you
Right.
can choose to release it. But then for some of us, like we can have intricate visions and all of these things to help us let go of that process. Yeah.
I think what's really important as well, there's a reason that it's coming. Okay. So it is for us to, one, understand it. Two, we do get to decide whether we want to release it. That which is really holding on, I think of it like, roots of a tree. It's really ingrained in us. Okay. That's because we really own it at such a depth. And so there's learning to be had in it. And so when we're looking in the matrix, or at least this is how I view it, when I'm in the matrix and I'm seeing, they kind of look like stagnant energies. They're blocked, okay, because they're not working in a harmonious relationship and they're not moving in a fluid energy like the rest of the energy. So they are like stuck points, okay? And so for me, I just access, I open it up. It's like a wormhole in a sort of way. And it takes me and the person into a particular place, if I can say that, a place, a particular energy, a particular story, because they all have a story. That's just it. It's a perspective. And that's what a story is. It's the perspective. You can change your story. You have to change the perspective. But I believe it's important for us to learn, what is the story about? Okay. Why have we owned it? There's all kinds of, like when we go to the Akashics, we have stored memory there. We want to heal the relationships and the things that are going on there, and why did I do that, and understand why you did it, and find out, is it still a valid energy? If it is still valid, what do I have to learn from it? What does it take, or what do I need in order to shift it? And so all that information will trickle in. And so sometimes you'll go numerous places. You can either go to numerous timelines, you'll go back in your particular life here on Earth. I mean, you never know where you're going to go when you open up those kind of wormholes, right? But you open it up and you find out what it's got to say. That's the most important thing. And then you figure out what it is that you can do with it. Sometimes it may take a couple times to really go in. It depends on how deeply entrenched it is within your belief systems. And yeah, and it's just an energy again. And so it's a matter of bringing it forward, understanding, moving it through. You might have some kind of physical reaction, whether you're breathing, crying, whatever you're going to do with it. And then the energy changes around it. And when it changes, you feel different about that old perspective. That's how true healing has happened. So yeah, that's kind of just it in a nutshell about that. Yeah.
In regards to stories, like I feel in the human experience, all of us have this experience of reality, and it is in relationship to all the things that are around us, whether it's relationship, our career, our spirituality, and we have this relationship. So it really is about how we define our relationship to these experiences. And through our storyline, I would assume that's important, right? Through our storyline, what happened in our past, how does that affect us now? And then by being able to tap into, let's say, like your Akashic records or your past lives, how that plays out? Because I've seen sometimes where your past lives would have similar storylines to this life or similar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Most times they do. And there's a reason for that. You'll maybe come in a different body or a different person to experience it in a different way. But there's a lot of mirroring and some type of route into this lifetime. And so it's important to really energetically shift that, not from the mind, not from the intellectual mind, but from deep in that energy. So you have to be able to go in and what I call influence the energy so that it begins to shift. And the person will feel that shifting going on. Like I said, some kind of reaction will begin to occur. They'll feel warm. They'll breathe different. They'll cry. I don't know, all different kinds of reactions will occur depending on the person and what you're shifting, right? And as that happens, then you go back into the story again and you kind of look at it and you see how the person feels about it. What has transpired? How do you feel? Because it's all in the feeling. It's like when you have a dream, people say, well, I don't understand what that dream was like. It was this person was getting, in a car accident, right? And I don't understand that. So yeah, it doesn't often mean that it's actually just what the dream is saying. It has more to do with how you feel about what is occurring, because that's where it gets lodged in how we feel about things. So I can say the sky is blue. Well, that's nice. Sky is blue. Okay. It's snowing out. Okay, great. Okay. But there's water coming in my house. No. Okay. So there's a feeling, there's a reaction. So everything else just rolls along its energy, right? But then where it gets stuck oftentimes is when you feel something. Oh, okay, everything is imprinted in your energy, but that holds a different kind of an imprint in your energy field. And then the more that this occurs, things that occur very similar to that takes more hold and it's more rooted for the person. And so it takes the manipulation or the influence of that energy to shift that. And I know for me, even when I'm shifting it with someone, I like the interaction. We talk, we engage, and then I can tell when it's moving because it's like, and so I can see the different energy fields like quantum, scalar, electromagnetic, so on and down the line. And so when it is shifting, either in scalar or in quantum, this like quiet, it's like almost like everything stands still. And that's what scalar and quantum feel like. It's almost like there's no movement in that energy, almost like time, like you're moving through it so quickly that it almost feels like you're not moving. And I can tell when it's shifting for a person, and it takes a few moments, and then I can hear the person say something, and then, and it's shifted. And it's like, yep, okay, there it is, on to the next. And it's quite fascinating to be a part of that, to hear somebody else be a part of it, and to engage with it simultaneously.
Fascinating. And would you say, and I'm going to tie this into our theme of your soul's calling and purpose, because I've noticed in my personal experience, the things that were really, really challenging to release were ingrained in like some of the things that I'm here to teach, right? Like not everyone has the same themes in their life, but collectively we all go through these experiences. So what would you say about that? Like how does our personal experience in healing ourselves tie into knowing what our purpose and calling is in this lifetime?
Well, I think so. I'll go back to when I lost my memory, or most of it. And what I had to do was learn to trust. And so that's what I teach a lot about, whether it be hypnosis or anything else. People will send me emails or ask me questions all the time, how they do this and this. And I often say one of the major factors is about trusting. You must open up to trust. Don't be skeptical. Don't think, oh, it's this or what. Just trust, be open to it. Why? Because I had to learn how to trust. So therefore, I can teach that, how to do that, And so I think also with the different ways of the different modalities and the different aspects of energy that I work in and that I can see and all, and I can teach that, I can share with people what that's like, how to come into that, because I had to learn it myself. Like you say, oftentimes we turn around and teach or share what we had to go through and experience. That's why there's so many people teaching different things or sharing different information, because you might have somebody that's had many extraterrestrial abductions, and so they're turning around and sharing information about that for other people to know. And so it's just about really understanding it, and then that's just the nature of turning around and wanting, humanity to learn from our own experience. And that's partially why we go through our experience, so that we can turn around and share it. So for me, I know I work up in the Galactic Federation. I go from place to place. This is one of my tasks that I do. And I collect information and I bring information. And so that's what my job is. And how do you attain that, So yeah.
So I guess that goes back to like, because we have different experiences and different levels of consciousness, like if our soul was here on a specific mission and we had a purpose to fulfill, how do we know what our purpose is?
How do we know? Well, you don't know until you do. There are hints. So people will go to sacred places and something will unfold, or they'll be drawn to something or a sacred place or a book or a particular person's teachings, or that's how we are learning through that one aspect, also through our own journeys or what we call meditations. But I think it's beyond. I think it's a journey. To me, a journey is different than just a meditation, but going in deep and accessing whatever modality or way that you're going to find that out, working with your high self and your guides. All of this is a way that these different times teach us who we are. Where are we from? What is either our origination or a particular star system that has a lot to do with what you are doing in current time. So I did a journey. I was taken to Sirius. So I have a lot of Arcturian, but I have a lot of Sirius as well, both. So for a while, it was very Arcturian, very involved, working with all of that. And then it shifted over to Sirius. And so now, because I work with DNA and I'm in the research and science of that, now that simultaneously, I am on Sirius as well in a timeline. I've been there, and they tell me who I'm working with and what I'm learning there. I'm working in a lab there on self-regeneration. And it's like, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm so entrenched in this lifetime, about DNA. I can't get enough of it. I can't get enough information, how to self-repair, heal. I'm in the healing arts for, over 30 years. Because that timeline is so connected to this timeline for me that it's transposing information constantly. And even though I'm not there in my mind on a continual basis, like I don't see it every moment of my life, I feel it coming in. And it is what drives me to do the work that I'm doing. So you don't have to always see it or have been there. But know that when you are driven to something, or when something gives you passion or it tickles you, Even children, they'll draw pictures and stories about things. You can tell a lot about where a child has been previously or what's connecting to them by just what they talk about. Well, we're the same way as adults. What calls your passion to you? What is that? There's so much richness in that. Or if you're drawn to a place, very important. It's part of the learning of what you're relearning, what you're remembering, what you're illuminating to, what you're going to bring forward in the world here to help the collective grow. There's so much to it for us that we may not even really know all of it, but you're going to know enough to bring you forward, to be who you are. And it's your responsibility to know that. So to find out, if you don't know, then to find out or find a modality that works for you, that you can find that information for yourself.
So what I hear from that is that like our purpose is being us. And by being us, all of the gifts, the skill sets, the things that we learn are going to be what's passed on. And what our passions are, those things are always going to be passed on. But like you said, like recently I started doing art, but I've been an artist my whole life. I shut that down before I went to college because my parents were like, no, you're not going to make money in art. So I stopped doing that. I went to business school. And this year it came full circle and I was told you're going to put activations in art. And it was from my lifetime in Lumeria as a crystal healer. And I was like, I had no idea those things were connected. But now that it's coming up, that has been on the forefront of my mind. Like I was like, no, I'm not supposed to be an artist, but it was something I had to heal, that limiting belief or the conditionings that I picked up in childhood and young adulthood, that I couldn't be an artist, that I wasn't allowed to, that I couldn't make money from it and things like that. So the storyline, like your life sets you up, for the things that you're meant to do.
It does. And that's interesting that you say that, Nikki. So here's the thought about that. I'm just going to give you a controversial side to that. Maybe back when you wanted to be an artist, you would have taken a route into art that would have been very different than what you're going to do today. But because you went into business, you learned certain things in business, you needed that because possibly. So I think of us like water. Water, whatever it flows over, it takes a part of it with it. Okay. We are like that. We always are collecting and taking pieces with us, and then we continue along our path, right? So you could have gone a little bit this way, but now that you've come into your awakening 5 years ago and you've learned all of this, now your art is going to be very different, probably. And you're going to infuse it with the beautiful healing that you are inspired to bring forward in it, the color and the shapes and whatnot, and what people are going to receive from it. That might be very different than what you would have done years ago. So, yeah, sometimes we think of it as being shut down. It also might be that it's just not your time quite yet, And so other things have to take place, other learning, growth, happenings in life. You can't put the cart before the horse kind of thing until it's just the right time. But when it's the right time and you feel it, that's when it's really appropriate to just really open it up and walk into it. No matter what the challenge is, that's the greatest gifts hang out in there, for us. So yeah, I think I'm always learning that as well,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective because I'm sure like for me gives me a lot of excitement to know that we go on all these different journeys. And we're always learning and we're always sharing our purpose. So it's not like there's an ultimate destination, but we keep becoming. We keep becoming more of who we are.
We are. We are. As long as we open ourselves and allow ourselves to really be, and we know that's consistently evolving who we are. Like, I'm not going to be who I am 2 weeks from now because something's going to happen. Life is going to happen and it's going to teach me something and I'm going to grow through something. So I'll be different 2 weeks from now. And so will you. And so will everyone else that's listening to this. And that's the beauty of it, is that we are expanding. The entire universes are expanding as well. It's when nothing is going to remain the same at all. And that's the exciting part of it, really, that we are becoming more ourselves and more of who our divine blueprint really is, knowing the light that we are. I mean, that's, I think, one of the most exciting things that ever happened to me. When I was in Peru, I met at one of the portals in Aramu, Meru, and these 3 light beings showed up. I felt like I was dematerializing. To explain it, I couldn't even explain what it felt like because there's no words to describe it, but I felt like my whole body, everything was not going to be here any longer. It was the most scary, weird feeling. But then 3 light beings showed up, right? And these light beings, they literally, and I've never experienced it like this again. This was the most magnificent experience I've ever had. Tops in my baby book. 3 light beings giving me or showing me what love and light, the purity of who I am, the love and the light. And, we do this in meditation and we experience in certain levels, but nothing like this experience ever have I ever had. It was the most magnificent and profound experience. I probably cried for 15, 20 minutes after, but it was such a release and happiness cry. It wasn't sad or anything. It felt so much like I knew myself, like I had forgotten myself. That's who I am. And from that moment, I knew I wanted every human being to know who they are and what is my mission in that. How can I bring that forward? Because that we cannot forget who we are. There's no words for it. There's just, people describe it as bliss and other words, but it's more experiential than it is anything. It is just, I don't know, on a mission to know what that is. So,
do you think that's spontaneous for every person and we can reach those elevated states, or are there things that we can do to maybe expedite it or have that experience?
I don't think everybody's going to experience it. No, absolutely not. I think there are people that are so closed or so afraid, or I've heard people tell me that they start to have an experience and they pull back because they get frightened from it. Many people, actually. So no, I don't think everybody is going to. Do I think we could? Yes, but I also think that's really your choice. And I think we have to trust the experience. There are things that we can do. This was a sacred place that I was in. And so that's why I had the opportunity. Prior to where I was standing at the doorway of Aramu, Meru, which is a portal. Prior to that, this was in Peru, and they use coca leaves. And so there was a cavern, and each person got to go up to the entry of the cavern and, with the 3 coca leaves, because that's that's the way, you ask for something. And I couldn't think of anything in a split second. And so what came to my mind was love and light. That's what came to my mind. Probably planted or transmitted, maybe, who knows? But then when I got up to the doorway, that's the experience I got, was just what I asked for. I don't know what anybody else got. I asked other people what they experienced. Nobody said they experienced, and we had like maybe, I don't know, a good 35, 40 people there. Nobody else experienced that. So I don't know. I think it's designed in some way in your contract, what you're to experience. I think it's also about what you desire, your intention, your deep desires, your heart being open and calling something forward. It has to do with the level of your soul's growth. Some are young souls still here, just coming into it. There are older souls, then there are really older souls. So that's a question that has multi facets to it in a sort of way. But I say, keep striving.
Keep striving. I mean, we're here to live, so it is about the journey and the experience. Thank you so much, Laurie. And is there any last words you would like to share with us?
Well, I'd just like to talk for a second about where we're going this year and the sacred places. So we've been to many. We've been to Mount Shasta, Blind Frog Ranch, Hawaii, Sedona, Peru, Mexico, Bimini, south of France, Egypt. This year, I'm taking a trip in mid-July to Sacred Avalon in England and then to Wales. So if you like dragons, Merlin, the ancient Avalon, the sacred, the mystery, the mythical, this is the place to come and to have these amazing remembrances and experiences. And then in October, we go back to Egypt again. And that was life changing as well. Last year, we were there in November, and I can tell you, there are no words to describe what it's like to walk up and lean up against the Sphinx, or to be in the king's chamber, or to experience Dendera or Sekhmet or any of those powerful deities that their energy is there. It's life changing. So, if you're looking for something to bring about that happening that we've been talking about this whole hour, these places can help that as well. And I love bringing people. It's been something that's been very passionate for me. So I love watching people go through their experience, and I love having it myself and sharing it. So yeah.
I'm so excited to hear that. And for those who are interested, what link would they go to for that?
Well, they can go to my website, which is wellnesswithin.net. And actually, specifically, if they'd like to find out more about the trips, it's under Spirit Adventure Tours on that website. So check it out. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie, for joining us on the Visionary Soul podcast. And I look forward to sharing this with the audience.
Thanks so much, Nikki, for having me. It's been really a pleasure. Such a delight.
Thank you for tuning into the Visionary Soul podcast. I hope this episode activated something powerful within you. If you love this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another visionary leader. Until next time, keep expanding, keep creating, and trust in your divine magic.